Hello everybody, back once again with another video. This one is a ranking of, I say Stephen King films. He's not directed these films. He has directed one film, is it called Maximum Overdrive? Heard really good things about, wow, most people really like it, but I know a few people said it's a really bad film. I think it's got like a goblin driving a lorry on the front cover. I've never actually seen that. I think I've read the book it's based on. Maybe it's a short story, I can't remember now, he's got so many books. Yeah, so most of these based on books wrote, published by Stephen King, and one or two of these he's actually wrote the sort of screenplay. I don't think it's based on a previous book. Quite hard to rank these because he's quite a diverse writer. Everybody, what's the word? Sort of lumps him in as a horror writer, which most of his bestsellers and I'd say like 80% or the majority of his stuff is horror, or at least thriller. Say Misery, that's more of a thriller, I'd say, than a horror. But ironically, some of the top ones on here in terms of films and in terms of the books I've read are not horror, more sort of drama, I'd say. Couple I'm missing, so I don't have The Running Man with Arnie, which is based on a short story. I think it's published under the name Richard Bachman. I don't have Cujo, which I do really like. I'd probably put that up in my like top five. Watched it a while ago on like streaming service. I can't remember what it was. I know a while ago the 4K came out. It was like 35 pound when it dropped, and then it sold out, and now it's like kind of silly money. I think one of my mates tried to buy it back at the time, and just he would have had to pay like 50, 60 for it, so didn't get it. But yeah, on with the video. I try not to ramble on too much, but there is a lot of these. So first, this is kind of an honourable mention. Is tells. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm quite ill at the moment. I've got some kind of virus. Hopefully, it's not monkeypox, but I kind of feel like I've got COVID, like bunged up, aching all over. Feel pretty crappy, but next week, well, from Friday onwards, I'm off work on, I say holiday, I'm not going anywhere, annual vacation for about 8 days. So I should be hopefully doing a video each day or a couple, and I'll have a lot more time to catch up. There's so many good YouTubers on here, I find it hard to sort of keep up to date with all their videos. So, especially Sammy G, Roy Barrett, Popcorn and Horror's had a break, Stuart George, what's he called? X File. Like I say, I'm sort of dosed up on medicine, so my brain ain't working too great. So maybe not a good time to record a video, but it might be entertaining for you lot if I say some crazy stuff. Yeah, I mean, so ill at the moment, I'm kind of hallucinating and things, like having auditory hallucinations. So yeah, so this one, I think Stephen King only writes one segment of this, one of the episodes. I think it's called Typewriter of the Gods, which I think is out of either Skeleton Crew or is it called 2 Minutes Past Midnight? Might even, no, I don't think it's in the Bachman books. But yeah, I've got quite a lot of his books. Maybe I'll do one of those sometime. But yeah, he does one episode, but I do really like this series, especially season one. Uh, one of my least favourites is Sleepwalkers. I think it's like an 80s, maybe 90s. Should we check? 92. It's got some quite bad special effects when the guy like turns into a cat in the car. Some quite sort of silly characters. People like changing into cats. Thing I didn't get is they change into cats, but for some reason actual cats are like scared of them. Yeah, I mean it's entertaining. It's not an awful film, but it's one of my least favourites. And yeah, it's just kind of quite a wacky sort of bizarre film. The guy, is he called? I can't remember the guy's name. He's like the black policeman, but he's got a cat called Cletus. He's the best character in it, in my opinion. Yeah, it's not a bad like script and stuff. It's just got some weird special effects and some bizarre kind of scenes. Dreamcatcher. Book of this is good and quite a massive book, but I think I've only seen this once, like quite a long time ago. Some quite famous people. I think I can't remember Morgan Freeman being in it. Maybe he narrates it. Timothy Oliphant. Is he the one out of Lord of the Rings? One of the Hobbits? Yeah. So without spoilers, this is kind of like an alien film, but yeah, I can't remember it too well to tell you the truth. But I wasn't impressed by it, so obviously I've ranked it quite low. And you've got The Mangler. This is the Arrow video version, starring Robert Englund. Quite a different role than you expect from him. Acting on the whole ain't too bad, but the guy that plays the foreman is, yeah, when they're in the like, what do you call it? Like the fact, it's not a factory. not a warehouse. Yeah, on like the shop floor, I guess, where the mangler machine is really bad actor. I don't know who he is that plays it. Quite good gore scenes in that, to be fair. Yeah, I mean, this is quite a maligned film, but I didn't think it was as bad as a lot of people say, but it is lower down my list just because I haven't watched it again since. But yeah, some people would make you believe this is like, up there with like Troll 2 and Birdemic and what's it called? Manos Hands of Fate as like just a terrible film, but it's not that bad. It's like 5 out of 10, kind of an average film, but with some entertaining bits. But yeah, the gore when it's not like a spoiler to say this, but the guy gets mangled is pretty good, like gore and stuff. But yeah, I found it quite entertaining. I'll put these two together. Children of the Corn. I don't know if it's number two. I mean, it says based on the story Children of the Corn by Stephen King, but to my knowledge, he only wrote one short story. I think it's called Jerusalem's Lot. It's not to do with Salem. Yeah, is it? I can't remember. I haven't read it in a while, but I don't think the story is actually directly called Children of the Corn. But yeah, I think he only wrote one story, so you'd assume really the first film was based on the story and not the second. But yeah, so I've got this. I got ages ago. I wouldn't have paid $9.99 for it. I got this from like a secondhand computer shop in my like hometown. I think it's called Game Scene. It's closed down now for like $1.99 or so. Quite a bad film. And then I got this Arrow one with Children of the Corn, Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice, and Children of the Corn 3, Urban Harvest. Other two ain't too great, but got this in the Arrow sale on HMV. I think it's like £25. So just to have it in the collection, it's a nice box and that. I think maybe they did a limited edition version that came with a book. But yeah, the first one is pretty good. I think that's not sure if it came out before Village of the Damned by John Carpenter, but a similar kind of feel. This one I do think is quite underrated. Quite a slow burn kind of film. The Dark Half with Timothy Hutton. Let me see if it tells you on the back so I don't go into spoilers. Yeah, basically a guy, so a writer. I think a lot of Stephen King stories and adaptations that get made to films or movies are about writers, and there is kind of usually, there might be a bit of a drunk or something if Stephen King had problems with stuff like that. I think they are always kind of a bit of a reflection or like based on his kind of story. Yeah, I watched this a couple of times. Remember liking this when I was a kid. Do need to revisit this one. It was entertaining, but yeah, compared to some higher up the list, it's just not as good in my opinion. Try and get through these a bit quicker so I don't make it go on for too long. Ed Harris, one of my favourite actors in History of Violence. He's really good. Max von Sydow is in it. I think he's the priest out of The Exorcist. Yeah, I've only seen this one once. I've obviously read the book a while ago, and it's like about a little shop where you sort of go in there and the guy kind of knows what you need, gives you something, but then you kind of owe him something for it. So it's set in Castle Rock, which I think is a series Stephen King did, which I've not actually seen, but I've heard it's really good. I keep seeing it on like Blu-ray or 4K in HMV, but it just always seems to be really expensive. This one I reckon is really underrated. I like this one with Miguel Ferreira. Is that how you say it? R.I.P. Yeah, there he is, just there. Miguel Ferrer, I guess you say it. An underrated actor, I think. But yeah, this is quite a good one. I mean, bit of a spoiler. It shows you the creature sort of on the front. But yeah, it's a vampire story where basically this guy flies around in these like, what do you call it, like a biplane, like a private kind of little jet to different airports, like secluded airports, and then he sort of drains the blood of somebody working there and then carries on flying. Yeah, some woman I know in work thinks it's a really bad film, but I think it's actually quite well made and quite entertaining, quite atmospheric. A lot of like sort of rainy weather and storms and things. Is that kid on? I know that lady. Yeah, well, I don't know if it says her name, but I do recognise her. No, I can't see it on the back. But yeah, I'd say that is quite an underrated one. Don't think that's ever been released on like Blu-ray or 4K, so hopefully Arrow, I'd imagine doing it more than like Second Sight or Criterion or someone. Hopefully they'll put that out. I am going to do a video soon of like top 5 movies I own on DVD and that need to sort of have a updated release. So yeah, it should be coming soon. Then you've got Creepshow 2. I double checked on the back and it does say, yeah, well, I mean, it says there on this version, Stephen King and George Romero present. Don't know if it's based. Yeah, I mean, The Raft is actually a story by Stephen King. That is the best story out of these three. The Hitcher is quite silly, over the top, and funny. Chief Woodenhead is quite a good one. Sorry, Old Chief Woodenhead. Yeah, I remember watching this when I was a kid, and I used to really like the anthology horrors as a kid. And then this one, when it came out, it was quite hard to get. There was a version with a slipcover. I think it came out and then it got like withdrawn or something, a bit like The Exorcist 3, and I couldn't get it for a while. Not as good as Creepshow 1, as we'll see soon, but better than Creepshow 3, which I haven't seen, but I've heard it's pretty awful. Stephen King's It. Sorry. Shame to rank it down this low, because as a kid I used to love this, really scared of it. First half of so part 1, and have it quite high up, but part 2, kind of not as good. Sorry. Once they're adults, like I said, I'm a bit ill, so bear with me if I'm coughing. I haven't had a dry throat all day until I start talking this much. But yeah, Tim Curry. Let me grab my water a sec. Tim Curry as Pennywise, really good, iconic. Didn't think Bill Skarsgård would be able to come close. I'm not saying he does a better job, but he is really good and sort of different in his portrayal of Pennywise, the clown. But yeah, when I was a kid, I think I've spoken about this before in my sort of films that scared me as a kid video I did like over a year ago. But yeah, Josh Fulci fan 101. I know he's a massive fan of this and of sort of Pennywise in it in general. I ranked it with it. Slightly maybe a better made film, but obviously that one made for TV. That one is. I think it originally aired on Sky One over 2 nights, sort of an hour and a half or so each episode. Yeah, like I say, the first part really good, but the second one you can kind of tell it's made for TV. And there was also another one they aired, Tommy Knockers, which I don't own. It's quite good, but yeah, I won't rank it too high. And The Stand, which I don't think I own. I've got the books of those, but I've seen the movies back in the day when I was a kid on like TV or VHS or hired them out. And The Stand is pretty good, but yeah, I don't own it. Anyway, back onto this one. So one of the more modern ones. Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a better made film than the older version. What's it say? I'm guessing it's 95 or so. Oh, 1990. I didn't realise it was that old. I think it aired a bit later than that on Sky One, to be fair. But yeah, anyway, back to the matter at hand. So I got a nice steelbook of this one. Yeah, I mean, some of the scenes are really good, really creepy. Bit with the kids, there's quite a lot of sort of bits when they're playing and stuff. Builds up the story, but I don't like that as much as later on with all the sort of effects and stuff. A few creepy scenes in it. Few quite bad CGI, but not as bad as part 2. Chapter 2, I went to see that at the cinema. Not only is it long, but some of the bits in it, like when the Paul Bunyan statue comes alive and that woman. So in this version, it's just a creepy old lady, like drinking tea with like blood in, and it hits a lot harder than when they CGI it into like a monster, and she's really tall with like, without being too crude, like 6 breasts, and she's got open wounds all over her. Yeah, it just looks really silly for me, kind of took me out of the film. I haven't watched it again since the cinema, but yeah, I can't say the chapter 2 I was too impressed with. I don't actually own it, so I won't rank it anyway, but probably be quite low down. Pet Sematary 2, I'm not sure if that's anything based on Stephen King's story, but Pet Sematary 1. Pet Sematary, probably my favourite book by Stephen King. Very depressing book, sort of dealing with the death of the son, and yeah, it's very depressing and very what's the word, like palpable and powerful, but it's a really well written story. And this again, I think when I did the films that scared me as a kid, Zelda especially from Pet Sematary, I know Horror Hands did a video talking about scariest characters from horror movies. And he ranked Zelda very high, but yeah, she traumatized me for years. But yeah, it's a well-made film. Mary Lambert makes it. Lots of other good characters and stuff. Gage, the kid, is really creepy in it and quite good acting. Missy, is she? No, can't remember the name of the young girl, but she's quite annoying in it when she's like screaming and crying. Not a bad actress, just the way they're getting her to like whine all the time. Church, when he comes back, obviously these aren't really spoilers. Pet Sematary, you can tell by the name, pets are going to come back. Obviously Zelda, really creepy. What's he called? The guy that plays Judd Crandall from The Munsters. Really iconic with his like southern drawl, and he's like, "You don't want to go down there." Yeah, it's one of my favourites as a kid. It has aged a bit now, but I still do like it. But yeah, I mean, it's not just the adaptations, but the original material written by Stephen King. It goes to show something that a good writer he is. That TV version of It and original Pet Sematary are two of the films that really quite traumatized me as a kid. Those and like Jaws and Candyman. But yeah, I've got an older video if you want to go and watch it about films that really scared me when I was a child. And you've got Creepshow. So I think Arrow did a nice version of this, but I never picked it up, and now it's really hard to get. Although a lot of the big boxes and stuff, limited editions by Arrow, I never thought I'd get. I found them in CEX. Some I've paid quite a lot for, like the Thing and that for like £28, but didn't sort of think anyone would want to trade them in, so I'm happy to get them. But yeah, Creepshow. So I think this has got some stories by Stephen King, but I think he does actually write it. He does act in the one, The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill, where he finds a meteorite and he touches it and he gets this green like fur growing on him, and quite sort of derpy kind of character he plays. But I guess he's meant to be, it's not offensive to say, but like a redneck kind of hillbilly sort of character. And his acting's good in the way he really portrays like as a dorky kind of uneducated idiot basically, but it's not sort of great delivery of lines and stuff by Stephen King. I think also in Pet Sematary he plays like what do you call it, like the Undertaker kind of thing at the funeral at the cemetery thing. So he's got a few cameos in these ones, and I think he does have a cameo in It Chapter 2. I think he works in a like, weird little old shop where they buy the bike. Silver, is it called? That they ride. Anyway, back onto track. So, yeah, Creepshow, written by George A. Romero and Stephen King, so you know it's going to be good. Yeah, I find this real fun. Not really scary. A lot of them are more sort of comedies. The Crate, probably my favourite, with Adrienne Barbeau. I think that's how you say it. John Carpenter's ex-wife. She's a real bitch in this. She's really good in it and quite sort of sexy. One with the cockroaches, really good. They're creeping up on you. Father's Day, quite funny and silly with Nathan Grantham. I know that's the name of him. What's the one? Something to Tide You Over. Yeah, Leslie Nielsen and I think it's Ted Danson. Really good roles. Yeah, I mean, as far as anthologies go, this is one of the best ones in my opinion. This is like a 2-disc special edition. See if I can get it. Oh shit! See if I can get it out with one hand so you can see it. Yeah, it's a really nice cover. That's like the old sort of cartoon comic book style. And it's got 2 discs. Chuck it to one side, like putting it back in with one hand. The Mist. So this is a Frank Darabont one. There's 2 Frank Darabont ones higher, which are both written by Stephen King. Yeah, first time I seen this, I really enjoyed it and was quite sort of blown away by the ending. So I think the American ending was a bit more positive, but the UK ending is quite a depressing sort of gut punch. Really good creatures. I think it's kind of a bit of a metaphor and allegory where there's always creatures around, but the real sort of danger to the people surviving is a human. So there's a woman in it who's like religious, and she's sort of turning people against each other. But yeah, I'm sure most people have seen The Mist, but yeah, really entertaining. Christine, directed by John Carpenter. So I know I had this in the John Carpenter ranking. Yeah, one of the first books maybe I read by Stephen King. I remember I tried to read some when I was like 9-year-old kid, like Tommy Knockers and that. I just didn't really understand them. I just didn't understand a lot of the language and stuff he used. Yeah, it's really well made. Still sort of stands up today. Bit of the language is dated. The one sort of what's the word? Criticism I would have of Stephen King as a writer, I think I've said this before, is when he tries to sort of write not children, teens, youth characters and the things they say, and it's kind of outdated. So I think, you know, Stephen King might be writing a story in the 80s and he's saying things that he might have said in the 60s of like, oh wow, super wizard and stuff, and kind of a bit out of touch sometimes. So this book, some of his stories do age a little bit in terms of, yeah, you could read one and you'll be like, kids aren't saying that, Stephen. Like, well, what kids are you talking to? Right? And yeah, kind of when he tries to be hip and like not so much down with the kids, but tries to, you know, write what he thinks kids are saying. And Christine's got a bit of that and quite a lot of like, I wouldn't say unnecessary, but sort of bad language and quite vulgar sort of words. But then the book has got stuff like that as well, to be fair. But yeah, really entertaining. One of the like better horror films. Put this one a bit higher, Carrie. So we've got the DVD version and this nice Arrow with a slipcase. I think I've said before, but I really prefer Arrow doing these slipcases rather than the J cards. Sort of protects it better and don't get lost and mashed off on that like a J card, and it just sits on there better. Whereas, yeah, I keep J cards on there usually, but if I get one second hour about the J card, or the J card gets like, when you put them next to each other, let's see if we can see, yeah, and sometimes they'll get like bent and stuff. It's not the end of the world to me, but yeah, sure, everybody knows this one, a classic, directed by Brian De Palma, one of my favourite De Palma films, to be fair. Not too much I can say about this, I'm sure everybody knows, but yeah, the mum, tell me her name in it. Piper Laurie. It's really deranged, kind of religious, like nut, overzealous, and she sort of bullies her, and then girls are bullying her, and there's like a good payoff. But yeah, won't really go on about I used to call it Carrie, but it might be pronounced Carrie. I think there was a sequel called Firestarter, which I've never seen. Stand By Me. This one really, first seen this when I was probably a teenager, like 15 or so, in the summer around my mate's house, and it's just got a really sort of feel good. I mean, it's got some quite bleak imagery and stuff, but it just, where it's set and the way it plays out is a really like kind of nostalgic, feel good adventure kind of style. But then when it ends, isn't a spoiler, but kind of they all go their different ways, and it kind of really hits you with a pang of like, no matter how good the friends you seem. I think there is a line in the dialogue where it says, the friends I had when I was like 12 years old, the best friends I've ever had, kind of thing. But, you know, over time you move away and people get married and do things, and you just lose that kind of those childhood friends that you never think you would. So yeah, it's quite a sort of, what's the word? Bittersweet kind of film, but kind of a bit feel good at the same time. But yeah, one of my favourites when I was a kid, and yeah, all-star child cast: Will Wheaton, River Phoenix, Corey Feldman, Jerry O'Connell, Kiefer Sutherland. River Phoenix, R.I.P. Based on the book by Stephen King, short story called The Body. Salem's Lot, probably the best made-for-TV film that's ever existed, in my opinion. Does it show him on the back? No, I'm sure everybody knows the iconic scene where, is it Danny or Ralphie Glick is like floating by the window, tapping on it with his fingernail. Yeah, one of the best vampire films, up there with like Fright Night and Blade, I guess, is a vampire film, really. One of my favourites. But yeah, I think this had a remake which made me quite bad. Never seen it, and then I think it's getting like a new sort of version done now, which don't look too bad, to be fair. But yeah, the book of this, one of Stephen King's better books, kind of quite hard to follow. It does jump like around back and forth between like time structures and stuff, but the way he creates the Marsden house, I think it's called, big house overlooking the town, creates it as a really foreboding sort of character, where you just look up at it and you know it's evil. And then the actual vampire, I think is it called Mr. Barlow? I didn't remember it was directed by Toby Hooper. Oh, it makes sense, that is really good then. Yeah, I think that might be the highest. No, not quite the highest ranked horror, but we'll get to them now. Misery, so I say that's more of a thriller. Amazing performance by Kathy Bates. I think she won or was nominated for an Oscar for this. Yeah, more of a thriller than a horror, but some really tense scenes. Not really a spoiler, but the bits when he's out of his wheelchair, when he's not meant to be, and she's coming home, and it's a mad dash to get back before she knows anything's wrong, and you're checking like, has he left anything out of place? Hobbling scene that quite sort of disturbed me as a kid, really painful to watch. Yeah, really well made film, really entertaining. Hadn't watched this for a long time, watched it again a couple of years ago and was sort of surprised how well it still stands up. I mean, James Caan, rest in peace, is very good in it as well, but Kathy Bates sort of steals the show. Yeah, more of a thriller really. The book is really good that it's based on. Basically, when he's in pain, the way Stephen King describes the pain that he's in, and when he has to wait to take his tablets, and how much it's hurting, and it really is poignant. I've never really seen someone in a book describe like agony and stuff as well as Stephen King does in the original story of Misery. Yes, I think first Stephen King book I own, maybe, I don't know if we can see it over there. It's The Shining, Carrie, and Misery all in one book, so three of his best stories. Talking of The Shining, This is probably the highest ranked, the highest ranked horror. Ironically enough, even though this is based on the novel by Stephen King, directed by Stanley Kubrick, probably my favourite Stanley Kubrick film, uh, Stephen King really didn't like this. I'm sure everybody knows this. Not really a trivia fact, but didn't like the way it was made. Didn't think it was true to the source material. So there is another sort of made-for-TV version that Stephen King was happy with. I think it does star Timothy Dalton. Was he called? That was in let me just double check a sec. That was in The Dark Half. Obviously, this video is going on quite a long time, but I knew it would because Timothy Hutton, because there is a lot of these to rank, probably like 20 or so. Yeah, sure, everybody knows The Shining. Opening scene with the music kind of sounds a bit like seagulls. Amazing sort of aerial shots tracking the car as it goes up the mountains. The Overlook Hotel, the way it's sort of shot and that looks amazing. One of the most iconic and isolating kind of places. Loads of really good scenes, loads of iconic scenes, like here's Johnny when he comes through the door. Yeah, I mean, I don't really get why Stephen King hated this so much. I mean, it takes a lot of artistic liberties compared to the book, but I don't think it's disrespectful to the source material, but there you go. And then the two best ones, I'd say, are not actually horror films, which is quite surprising from someone that's known as a horror writer. But yeah, The Green Mile. I mean, this does have some quite disturbing scenes. Obviously, if it's a spoiler, you can tell by the name and that people on death row. And obviously, when they get electrocuted is always quite brutal. But when Percy, as he called, the evil git, doesn't wet the sponge, it's quite a sort of shocking scene, and it happens even though the guy's on death row because he's got his little mouse called Mr. Bojangles. You kind of what's the word? Sort of have a bit more sympathy. I wouldn't say you relate to him, but out of all the characters, it kind of pulls on your heartstrings more when he gets sort of a painful death. But yeah, it does have a kind of mystical, is that the word? Magical, supernatural kind of edge to it. So when I was first watching this when I was a kid, I thought it was just a straight up kind of prison film. I was really enjoying it, and I didn't expect the angle of a bit of like a sort of magical sort of thing to it. Then I'm sure most people have guessed this if you know my taste, and I've spoke about this before. It's one of my favourite films ever. So the top one for me is The Shawshank Redemption. I do need to upgrade this onto 4K or something, but even though I love it, I just haven't watched it in quite a few years, where I've just seen it so much as a kid and stuff. I used to watch it with one of my mates a lot of times, one of my ex-girlfriends. But yeah, sure, everybody knows this. I know Stuart George and Sammy G and that are massive fans of this. I think Sammy G said it's his second favourite movie of all time. Yeah, what can you really say about The Shawshank Redemption that hasn't been said? Amazing writing. I've said all this before. Amazing script, amazing soundtrack. Just double check who does the soundtrack. Screenplay, production. Yeah, I can't actually see it on there at the moment. I probably remember after this video's ended, but I think Stuart George did say in one of the videos who does the soundtrack to it. But yeah, as far as all these go, this is the best made film in my opinion. Probably not the best book by Stephen King. The Green Mile probably isn't either. Like I said, my favourite's probably Pet Sematary, Salem's Lot, and It, or maybe Misery or Carrie. But yeah, kind of more diverse writer than you'd think, Stephen King. Yeah, so that's all the ones I've got. Probably are other ones out there I don't own, or look through the collection. There could even be some I forgot that just don't feel like Stephen King film, well, adaptations, should I say, or I forgot to buy him or something. But yeah, I think that's all of them. So yeah, sorry this went on quite a long time, but you know, even if you talk about each one of these for only a minute, there's so many of them, it is going to come to 30 minutes. And as you all know, I'm liable to waffle on. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. See you again. Bye.